Why, hello to all and welcome back to the one, the only, the Should You Get, as we have a look at whether or not you should get any of the naval packs currently available to get into the closed betas in War Thunder. But before we get into any of that, you're probably wondering why exactly there is now classical music playing in the background, and why none of these clips have any sound. And the reason for that is quite simple, as in time of recording, the events have all ended indefinitely, and I only just realised that for some reason my recording software went, yeah, I'll record all of your video for you, no problem, but I don't really want to record any audio for any of the clips, so I do apologise for that, but oh well, at least you get to listen to a lovely bit of classical music. Now, for those of you who don't actually own these packs, and, you know, are actually interested in whether or not you should get these packs or not, you must firstly understand that you can get up to a maximum of 10, that's right, 10 ships. These being 5 destroyers and 5 motor torpedo boats, which are basically just patrol vessels with, well, torpedoes and depth charges strapped to them, which range all the way from completely overpowered to absolutely hopeless, but we'll get more onto that later. But how much do you have to pay to get access to this closed beta, I hear you ask? And, well, quite simply, the absolute cheapest you can pay is 35 euros, which is quite a bit of money. Although, that being said, upon purchasing this pack, you will also get 1000 golden eagles, and you will get, I believe it is the ship you buy as a premium when it does eventually release into the main game. So, with that being said, I guess the real question is getting one premium ship, 1000 golden eagles, and access to this closed beta really worth 35 euros? And well, that's what we're here to find out on today's video. So, strap yourselves in guys, it's gonna be one hell of a ride. Upon joining my first game, the first real thing that stuck out to me was the cannons on the ship, as for starters they never seem to fire where you want them to and always go far too far, meaning that you have to give insane lead in order to strike targets accurately. Which at first I was like, oh okay, you know, this is just a bug or a glitch, which is often a case in these early betas. I don't have an issue with that, but it turns out that's actually what they're supposed to do. And what you're supposed to do is upon locking onto an enemy ship, you're then supposed to constantly keep mashing the X button to keep re-locking on to the same target, as to then keep re-estimating their distance, so then your cannons on your ship will fire to that most recent distance provided, which seems really sort of unnecessary and clunky, if I say so myself, because, well, is it really necessary? Can't I just lock onto a ship and then it'll just keep estimating their distance between me and them, roughly speaking? Do I have to keep mashing the exact same button over and over again as to make it so every time they move slightly further or slightly closer to me, I have to just keep whacking the button? Like, why can't it just do it automatically? It seems a bit unnecessary to me, but once again, it's an early beta, so I can let it off for such things. The second major thing that stuck out to me was the fact that these cannons have an amazing reload rate. I mean, I understand that, you know, small cannons can be reloaded by expert crews very quickly in real life, but in this game, your crews just keep reloading at an amazing rate, capable of firing a shot and then having another one ready to fire in seconds. I mean, really? For a game that's trying to be so realistic and constantly tell me I have to keep re-updating my distance between me and the enemy, why on earth do these cannons fire so quickly? It's like I'm constantly playing arcade, when despite the fact that I only ever played on simulator through all these events. So once again, it's another sort of strange kind of mechanic that I don't really know why they added, but once again, it's a beta. But it's not all bad, as upon actually hitting a target, War Thunder has one major advantage over pretty much all other naval MMO games, which is that there are no health bars per se, and it's more down to hitting specific parts of the ship, as is the case with aircraft and ground forces, and has always been one of the stronger parts of War Thunder, and I think that perhaps with a little bit more fine-tuning, it could be made really quite good in naval forces as well. Although I can't really say the same for the torpedo tubes you will find aboard the destroyers, as unfortunately you only get one torpedo per tube and absolutely no reloads in realistic, meaning that, well, firing your torpedoes is a pretty big deal, and you'd hope that they would be a pretty powerful and useful weapon to only be used in the ideal situation. But in reality, barely anyone used them, and for the few who did, well, 9 times out of 10 they made absolutely no difference to the outcome of the battle, mainly down to the fact that not only are the torpedoes quite slow, but also they get nice juicy markers on top of them, which means that every single ship within pretty much any range of them whatsoever will be capable of seeing them come slowly towards their destroyer, which means that 9 times out of 10 everyone just maneuvers out of the way with ease, as remember, these are destroyers and also patrol torpedo boats, and well, they're pretty maneuverable, so really torpedoes aren't much of a concern, especially when you can see them coming from many miles away. But at the very least, torpedoes do something, and you can use them, which, mind you, is more than what I can say for the depth charges you get on your torpedo boats, which are the most pointless things I have ever seen. I mean, why on earth do you even want a depth charge in a game that has no submarines anyway? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And in all honesty, when I first saw them, I was really quite confused as to what their purpose was. I mean, there's no submarines in the game, so I guess they're for destroying enemy ships that are behind you? I guess? So, well, what I did was, after playing a few games, I was finally presented with the perfect opportunity to blow up a boat behind me, and as you can see now on your screens, they come in out behind me. I drop my charges thinking, oh yes, they're dead, I've got the kill with these depth charges, and they do basically nothing. Like, seriously, if they can't destroy little boats, and they can't destroy submarines because there aren't any submarines, why are they even in the game? So really, I can't even understand why they're here. Other than that, I would actually have to say that the torpedo boats were overall the most enjoyable part of the event, as they get to start in the centre of the map, well shielded by the islands around them, which allows these little boats to go around at full speed and basically fight amongst themselves. Not to mention the fact that due to them being in a relatively confined area to each other, you're always fighting in close proximity, which means that torpedoes are actually a viable weapon, and it means that having little cannons or fully auto cannons and machine guns on your boats is actually really quite fun to use, as you get to hose down enemy ships whilst ducking and weaving between islands and tactically placing yourself so you can strike an enemy before they even know you're there. And really, I just felt that the boats were the strongest part of this event, and that they're really the only part of the event I am genuinely looking forward to seeing getting implemented into the main game. The only other major issue I had on the technical side of this event was the secondary armament you'll find on most of the ships, which was basically only used for anti-aircraft use in-game, which is fine, But one of the big issues I have with these weapons is that they don't ever fire at enemy ships when you get close to them. And indeed, the only way you can actually fire many of these cannons and machine guns at enemy ships that get close to you is if you take manual control of them, which you have to do by pressing Alt 3 on the keyboard for some reason to activate them. But of course, if you're using your secondaries, then you have no control over your primaries, if that makes sense. So really, it's just sort of more of these kind of clunky sort of parts of the game that could just do with a bit of ironing out, and just a bit of streamlining here and there, if you catch my drift. As far as balancing is concerned, I must admit that it's pretty terrible, as some destroyers are distinctly better than others, as well as some patrol boats are distinctly better than others. QED, the Russian patrol boat, was goddamn unstoppable, and I kept racking far too many kills up with it. Meanwhile, other ones like the British Dark, I could barely get one kill with it before getting obliterated by someone who wasn't stupid and decided to choose the Russian patrol boat. Or I was just destroyed by a destroyer from a very far distance away, as, well, yes, destroyers can also attack the patrol boats in the middle of the map, and the patrol boats basically can't do anything about it. Really, the only times I genuinely felt quite annoyed and frustrated when playing the patrol boats was when one of the enemy destroyers inevitably got around the island and enters the centre of the map, at which point they proceed to completely decimate every single torpedo boat there, and there isn't a whole lot you can do about it. This is partially down to the fact that the torpedo boats will get one hit killed by a destroyer pretty much all of the time, but also the fact that your main cannon armament can only so much as tickle a destroyer, any real destroyer in the game, and the fact that, as already said, torpedoes are pretty obvious when it comes to this game, and the only real times you will ever be capable of getting torpedo kills consistently is if you're right up close to an enemy, which will never happen because the destroyer would have blown you out of the water before you got even close to them. So, you know, these sort of balancing issues were really the only major issues I had from the gameplay point of view. But that being said, you could easily say that the only reason patrol boats and destroyers are in the same games with each other is just because that it's a beta and they're just testing all this stuff out, and they just want to get as many players on the same server as possible just for testing purposes. So as long as these issues are dealt with long before ships reach the main game, then I will be more than happy with it. So really, I guess it comes down to the question of, should you get one of the packs for naval forces as to allow access into the naval betas? And personally, I would say not really. I mean, you're not missing a whole lot. As already said, these are just test servers that are rarely on as it is anyway, and they're not particularly well balanced, and they're nothing more than a sort of a kind of a gimmicky sort of event at this point in time that I would say was quite fun, yes, but not really competitive, not yet anyway. And personally, I still think that as far as developing naval forces in War Thunder is concerned, I would say that Gaijin still have a lot of work to do before it becomes a viable part of the main game. That being said though, if you do actually want to play a really good naval game, then I would strongly recommend playing World of Warships. And no, I haven't been sponsored to say that, I just genuinely think it's a pretty good game that I play fairly often. and is something I recently made a clan in. I like it so much. So if any of you want to join my clan and you are on the European server for World of Warships, then just search up FFTF, or the First Fleet of the Templar Federation, and I'll pretty much accept anyone who would like to join. So yeah, you can meet me there. Sometimes I sail out with my clan if I get the time to do it and that, and I think it's a good lot of fun, honestly. I think World of Warships is a perfect example of a really good sort of World War 1 to 2 battleship game, and is something that really, if Gaijin wants to have a good reference or good example of a really good naval game of this kind of genre, then World of Warships is by far the first choice I would recommend. And that's about all there is. So, if you like this video, then of course make sure to like, comment and subscribe. It's always appreciated. And until next time, I say thank you very much, and I'll see you then.